Hello and welcome to Interviews with Artists, episode 5. Our upcoming Sandbox collection is launching on the 28th of January. The collection name is sIgnALs, created by the artist DATAbstract. Data, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hey there, thanks for having me, Sid. Yes, I'm DATAbstract. My handle on Twitter is DAT_A_BASTRACT. I think I spelled that right. DATAbstract.
Nice.
I'm a creative code artist. I've got several collections. I've got a Gen Zero, a very kind of small collection of 37 pieces available that I've auctioned through Holoplex, also listed on exchange.art. I have a series of strange attractors called the DATAbstractors series, which are also currently listed on exchange.art for a buy now option. And I'm really excited to be kind of launching my first formal collection with Fract here on the 28th.
Okay, Data, so how did it all start for you?
Well, I began kind of exploring the digital art space as early as high school and through plotting and writing code to generate images based on math is kind of what got me into things. I've kind of always been a math geek to a certain extent. And when I first started exploring computers' power to kind of take the information and math equations and generate beautiful kind of images through Mandelbrot sets, strange attractors, different forms of plotting, and kind of the exploration through kind of chaos theory and different textbooks and kind of learning about the nature of kind of geometry and the nature of math and its kind of association with arts, and led me into kind of a career path that followed kind of architecture and more structural forms through engineering and design in that aspect, and a career in that path with kind of, I guess, coding and art side being kind of a passion on the side. Been exploring that for decades, and through the NFT space or through kind of crypto, kind of exposed the whole market and the whole kind of world of online and digital art in a new way that I hadn't kind of conceptualized before. It had been kind of a private passion and something I'd kind of used to express those artistic forms in physical, whether it be through woodworking or kind of design aspects of physical pieces, but really leaning into the digital sphere and the kind of acceptance of that kind of digital art as its own form, and digital art as its own kind of medium to a certain extent has been a fairly recent transition in the past 2 to 3 years.
So you came straight into Sol and didn't look at any other platforms when it came to NFTs. Was there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I spent probably too much time exploring around and looking at different chains and looking at the ETH environment. For me, I think the environmental aspects of Sol was definitely a big selling point. Also, the kind of excitement and energy in the space that wasn't kind of overrun by some of the big projects and big kind of media presence, and there was a kind of freshness and newness to Sol when I entered the space that was just invigorating. You know, there was a real feeling from the kind of dev side. I spent some time kind of going through GitHub and the different development teams that were going on, and the energy really seemed alive on Sol in a way that I couldn't find, at least on Ethereum. Not to say it wasn't there, but as I was in my searches, I kind of landed in the kind of Sol ecosystem, and that kind of openness and the kind of community aspects that were going on and the welcomeness of everybody to accept kind of new ideas and the energy of everybody learning and everyone kind of exploring together with no kind of established protocols, no kind of established systems that you're kind of forced to adapt to. It seemed very kind of open and available for whatever you wanted to do, which was, you know, exactly what I was looking for and something that was very thrilling and still continues to be.
So how long ago was it when you minted your first piece of artwork?
It was fairly late to the game, to be honest. I didn't mint my first piece, I guess, until, it would have been late September of 2021. I'd kind of been working on the digital aspect, the digital art aspect, and the kind of, I write in Python primarily. Had been working on that, since about January, and kind of curating to a certain extent my code and the digital pieces that were coming out of it. That was another kind of learning curve, was kind of an adaptation to the uniqueness of the NFT space as far as really diving in first and understanding the ecosystem rather than kind of the more traditional art world where you can kind of go off in your own corner and make your art and then you bring it to market. So that was kind of a first, I struggle to call it a misstep, but it was certainly an education in kind of really how unique and different the NFT space is from a traditional art market and the way that it functions, and the way that the community is so involved and is so kind of integral to the whole process.
So the collection you're launching with Frat, tell me a little bit about the kind of concept behind the pieces of artwork.
Yeah, my namesake of kind of DATAbstract and the idea of the whole project as a whole really kind of came out of this crypto candles and signals project, where I was looking at, through my kind of just interest in chaotic systems and math and exploring the kind of trading aspect of crypto and looking at different charts. And, I'm not a trader by trade, and I still don't quite understand that world. And this exploration was kind of my opportunity to kind of try to dive into that and try to kind of understand the world of the trader, the world of kind of these chaotic systems, and how we use these innovative tools, and as far as visual plots and data visualization tools on a regular basis to attempt to kind of predict markets or gain a deeper understanding of trends, correlations, and things that are happening. And what are our limitations, and where do we actually understand this, and who's actually writing the code that defines these systems and gives us these indicators, and how, the quants of the world have kind of been able to capitalize on these kind of understandings and these deeper kind of relationships. And so I kind of initially started looking at that from a kind of analytical standpoint. And to be honest, a certain amount of it just kind of went over my head. It's such a deep world. And, the people that do that professionally are truly skilled artisans in their own way. And this project kind of developed out of accepting my own kind of ignorance, or accepting the kind of confusion that comes out of this, and trying to kind of explore that chaos and the kind of nature of these numbers in a way that wasn't necessarily directly tied to a kind of trying to come down to a binary choice of buy, sell, but rather letting the kind of chaos of the numbers and letting kind of the unknown of the aspects of these markets kind of express themselves. So the algorithms and the kind of the methodology I've developed through this project kind of look at that in what I think is a unique way, and explore the kind of fractal edge, the kind of chaos that we don't understand, and it's very difficult to kind of comprehend. And at a kind of extra dimensional level, the kind of these concepts that we can't even really visualize in our own heads, and require this kind of computational and these abstract mathematics to even resolve out into a choice.
Wow. So the general collection looks at 2021. There's several coins featured. Can you tell me a little bit about the choice behind those coins?
The selection of coins was trying to get a broad slice of the ecosystem, obviously from a kind of soul perspective to a certain extent, with some of the tokens that are included and some of the different coins. Also, the broader kind of NFT community and where the kind of excitement and energy is coming there. And I think that broad perspective and the kind of distillation down to the individual weeks or individual months kind of explore the kind of fractal nature of market data, in the sense that you can look at the year as a whole, or look at these slices in various slices of time. And, when you zoom in on a day or a year, the kind of nature of a standard chart looks very similar and often is very hard to distinguish between, given the kind of speed of transactions and the excitement of the kind of 24-hour nature of the crypto trading environment, which I think is also a kind of unique feature of crypto in general. I mean, obviously there's some FX markets and different traditional markets that trade on a 24-hour basis, but the kind of continual stream of information that is being constantly analyzed, I think, is what I'm hoping to kind of capture. And through these different slices, whether it be coins, whether it be tokens, or whether it be kind of the market in general, I think exploring the different ways you can kind of dissect to try to draw intuition or meaning for what's been happening.
Yeah, because we've got Sol featured, we've got Bitcoin featured, and within those coins, there's this kind of breakdown of weeks. Obviously, there's 52 of those, and then that goes into months, and there's 12 of those. It's like sound like I'm talking to a kindergarten kid here. And then we go into quarters and year to date. So, for instance, Sol will have one NFT for the year to date, and there'll be 4 NFTs associated to the quarters. And then, for instance, 52 associated to each week within the period 2021. Same for ETH and the others. And then we move on to the tokens, and specific tokens have been chosen. We are featuring FRAT, and you're going into a little bit more work when it comes to the NFTs which have less frequency appeared. I didn't want to use rare there.
Yeah.
I was trying to go about every
trying
single
to avoid
word.
rare. No, it's. I think it's kind of an interesting concept, the whole kind of idea of rarity and that when it relates to these markets. I think the kind of ideas of looking at a year as a kind of whole piece and a kind of singular piece. And then as you kind of dissect down to months or quarters, months, and then weeks, you get these kind of series to a certain extent, and seeing the relationships between them and kind of the individual perspectives shift as you kind of go down in the kind of focus of time.
So within that, obviously, we were talking about kind of year to date, and we're also talking about the tokens. There's going to be a kind of different approach taken to how those are curated. They're going to be a bit more handcrafted. Not to say that the whole collection isn't handcrafted, but there's going to be more time spent on those. Can you give me like a brief overview of how the collection is created to begin with?
Sure. So the process of kind of creating these sets, I dissect the data from an API feed from Binance and essentially split based on kind of the variables that are going in are simply the time, volume, and price. And so the volume is captured over a certain candle. So if you're familiar with a candlestick chart, it's capturing the volume traded over specific time windows. And to your point of the year to date would be split based upon 2-hour candles. The weekly pieces will be split based upon 5-minute candles. And so the kind of volatility and the nature of those data sets are slightly different, but they're also kind of obviously related. And so the curation, as far as pulling those data sets down, I then run them through kind of an algorithm that basically extrapolates that data into a very large point cloud. It uses some kind of linear algebraic techniques of looking at the curvature of the data and folding it in on itself. Those point clouds then are stored in kind of a GLB or a CSV kind of format of vector points. And I then kind of begin the curation of actually creating the perspective art pieces that are based upon the kind of level of zoom of that onto that point cloud, the color mapping, the use of kind of different colors to represent different moods and feels based on the data sets themselves and kind of the nature of what they are. And so it's a kind of iterative process to a certain extent where images are fully generated out of my Python script. So there's not a kind of visual editing in the sense of looking at a Photoshop and putting filters or layering color maps or adjusting color gradients. It's all done within code. So it's a kind of curation to an extent of seeing some visual representations, looking at a large plot or finding interesting perspectives, zooming in on those, setting the zoom levels, and then applying different color gradients and kind of playing with those to kind of try to capture in what I feel is kind of the most representative form, the nature of the abstracted data.
Right. That's the brief overview.
Yeah, that's the brief overview. Try to keep it short. I could go on for a while. It's a pretty fun process because it is exciting thing from the kind of creative code side is you don't go in, you get surprised and shocked by unique forms that come out, and you get to kind of type in, edit a few lines of code and see what comes out of it. And then it's kind of, honing in on that form or that shape that represents it. And, it's constantly surprising and constantly kind of unique attributes that represent themselves that when, looking at a data set or a standard line chart, relationships kind of come out in ways that you wouldn't expect. And it's often kind of find myself sitting, staring and wondering why and how that kind of form came into shape. And what is there meaning there? Is it purely abstract, or is it, is there a kind of deeper truth in that, or deeper information layer that I'm trying to kind of still get my head around? But that's kind of the enjoyment from my perspective of the collection as a whole and kind of the individual pieces.
I think that's the interesting thing with generative art as well. And I heard you talking about this on a Twitter Spaces today, was the kind of happy accidents. I think the phrase you used was mistakes, and there's obviously different terms you can use there. But obviously a painter with his or her paintbrush, there's a lot of control there. And a lot of these kind of surprises that you're talking about when you've been going through changing the code. Is there a lot to be had from that compared to traditional way of coming up with a concept? Have you seen accidents and then gone, wow, that completely changed your direction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, when you're writing code, there's all sorts of ways of, you're writing different loops and different ways of progressing through and function calls that oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but periodically you forget something, or you loop in the wrong direction, or you do something in a way that maybe you weren't intending from a stand. And then as you're debugging, you kind of figure that out, and then you see what comes out. And sometimes the page comes out blank because you've messed something up. But sometimes this unique form comes out in a totally unexpected way. And then it's like, oh God, all right, now I got to figure out how to capture that again. What did I do? What am I doing differently? And sometimes that debugging process is hours and hours of trying to understand the flow of information and where something went differently than you expected it to.
What led you to this idea?
So, I mean, I originally actually came into this kind of concept through CNC woodworking, believe it or not. And I was doing some interpolations of image files and different data sets into CNC code, G code, writing a Python script to basically take data information and formulate it into G code to carve these large wall murals on wood. And I essentially, at one point, instead of importing the direct image file, imported it in a wrong format, and this kind of crazy version of the image kind of manifested itself in G code. And that kind of started my curiosity, or piqued my curiosity, to kind of chase down that kind of idea of conceptualizing these familiar forms or familiar information in kind of these abstract ways, given the complexity that's kind of inherent in these forms, and also the kind of information that's embedded that we don't necessarily see through kind of traditional visualizations. So whether it be kind of a traditional photograph or a traditional chart, there's kind of a familiarity there. And when mistakes are made, or when kind of you just let the kind of information find itself, there's kind of a weird experience of seeing things in a new and different way. That was kind of the impetus to kind of chase this further.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the concept when you first said it to me. And then even more impressed when I saw it on your Twitter feed, the Bitcoin example. And then when you compare it next to a chart of what that's actually taken from, it kind of like does make you sit there and think exactly those kind of things you were saying, is that it gives you like an illustration over data. It gives you an art piece of data, which in one way you look at, you said about the traders, staring at their screen. You've got that comparison of people standing in a gallery and then staring at your artwork. And there's that like relationship on how it can be used from a pleasure perspective, the art, to, a business or money-making perspective. Was that featured in kind of like your thinking at all?
Yeah, I think that you kind of hitting on it. I think we grow accustomed to these kind of forms and these simplifications of forms, whether it be through kind of a simple bar chart or a simple line chart that we use to kind of draw. There's kind of an inherent relationship with that kind of line up, good, line down, bad, these kind of emotional attachments we have to these simple trajectories of lines. And I think trying to kind of explore the abstract reality of that in terms of removing the kind of familiar and letting the abstract and letting the kind of chaotic systems allow you to kind of apply your own kind of intuition or your own kind of emotional relationship to that period of time, and seeing the kind of different forms and kind of attaching what you see to that. For example, one of the series is like Dogecoin, which, has a very unique trajectory as far as its market performance over 2021, and seeing its form and its distinction. It's one of those things you can see it's different in a certain way, but you don't know how and you don't know why. And there's kind of this, complexity in that allows you to kind of explore your own kind of relationship to it and your own kind of what you're bringing, what if somebody looking at it, or you yourself have kind of an attachment or a kind of idea about that period or that kind of the motion of that market or the data at the end of the day, and kind of letting yourself explore the kind of openness of that idea rather than kind of trying to always distill it down to this buy-sell mentality or this good-bad mentality, letting it kind of exist in this kind of ethereal space of it is what it is, and we don't, whatever it may be or whatever it was, is more complex than those kind of simple relationships that I think a lot of data visualization is very focused on, and somewhat rightfully so when you're trying to make decisions and such. You're always trying to distill it down, and the basis of this project is kind of trying to take the opposite approach and let it expand. Don't distill it down. Through the kind of algorithms of using the kind of linear algebra, there's a lot of correlations to the kind of the nature of dimensions in data and the nature of kind of relationships, and letting those kind of extra dimensional relationships kind of show, because we often try to kind of remove those extra dimensions for comprehension's sake.
Perfect. Is there anything I've missed out that you want to add?
No, I think I'm just very excited to kind of present this in a more cohesive way. I think I've kind of struggled through my journey of kind of putting things together in a way that I think is digestible and exciting. And I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity with Fract and this collection to kind of present the Crypto Candles sIgnALs project in a format that I think people can appreciate and kind of get a better understanding, because so much of this is a little bit complex or a little bit kind of heavy or deep. And I think having had the time and over the past couple of months to kind of understand my own ideas and my own kind of idea with this project, I think this is a unique opportunity and a great way to kind of share that and share the kind of cohesive nature of the series and look back at kind of 2021 and all the kind of volatility and excitement that it had from a fresh vantage point.
Well, Fract are really proud to partner with you on this. 28th of Jan, be there.
Exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for joining me. I've really appreciated your time.
Absolutely.